Hello there. My name is Travis Broadbeck, and I work at CARES of New York, Inc. as the Operations Technology Specialist. Thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome to the presentation. We'll be investigating signs of racial disparity in the community by analyzing data entered into HMIS between 2018 and 2020. Let's go ahead and get started by covering the purpose of today's presentation. In just a moment, we'll cover the methodology. But before we do that, let's cover the expectations for today. Today is just the starting point, and our goal is very big and important. Our objective is to come to an agreement with what the current status is of the community. Imagine this like the state of the COC address. We're taking the first step in understanding where we are. And after today's session, we want to start asking specific and pointed questions that will drive lasting change in our community. And by investigating these questions and learning more about the patterns in the data, we'll be able to recommend process improvements and also invest more resources in improving the community's operations. In a moment, we'll cover the executive summary points. But first, let's talk about how this analysis was calculated. First, again, we're looking at HMIS data between January 1st of 2018 and December 31st of 2020. Any records that did not have complete race data were removed. So any records with data not collected, client refused, or client doesn't know. Also, we removed any clients that had an age that was greater than 109 years of age or less than 0 years of age. And again, we're only looking at these 3 years of data by calendar year and not HUD fiscal year. And I do want to mention that we're looking at total admissions. So we are not looking at a deduplicate analysis. We're looking at every time someone shows up at a program, is entered in HMIS, and then receives services. Here are the key points that we can take from this descriptive analysis. First and foremost, there is an overrepresentation of Black or African American clients in the homeless system, as recorded in HMIS. Whether you compare the population of HMIS admissions to the census population or to the poverty population recorded by the 2017 American Community Survey, there are signs of overrepresentation and racial disparity occurring in the community. Next, the project types that experienced the greatest number of HMIS admissions between 2018 and 2020 are the emergency shelters. And one thing we do want to note is in 2020, the total number of emergency shelter admissions was nearly double 2018 admissions. Third, coordinated entry, a new program type that prioritizes clients based on need, did grow substantially as a new CE system was built over the report period, with the most growth seen in 2019 and 2020. And lastly, we do know anecdotally that admissions were limited in 2020. So there is a possible indication that we have very difficult trends to analyze due to the impact of the pandemic, both on our programs directly and also in the community indirectly. First, let's compare the population of all HMIS admissions between 2018 and 2020 to the 2019 census population and the 2017 poverty population. We see that although white clients make up more than 90% of the community's population, 19% of all HMIS admissions were from clients who were Black or African American. The same conclusion is drawn when you compare the HMIS admission population to the poverty population. In both instances, there is an overrepresentation of Black or African American clients in the homeless system. To provide more context to the percentages provided in the prior slide, this only looks at the total number of clients admitted into HMIS between 2018 and 2020. The most obvious data point here is the large proportion of Black or African American clients admitted into HMIS. This is also complemented by the number of clients who identify as 2 or more races. Tying back to our point from the executive summary, we see that the number of records entered into HMIS each year did grow immensely year over year. So the trends that we can identify in the data may be unreliable. In other communities, usually the number of admissions recorded in HMIS decreased greatly between 2019 and 2020. This was an indicator that we were not collecting data due to the pandemic. Reasons being that some programs had reduced program capacity, there was reluctance amongst clients to present for services, and the impact of stimulus programs in the eviction moratorium. However, in this visualization, we do see an increase of admissions year over year, even with the impact of the pandemic. So we can assume that there is some missing data here, in addition that the trends are hard to identify due to the growth in HMIS records each year. In this visualization, we're looking at annual HMIS admissions by year and race. And what we can see is year over year, there was a significant increase in the number of white clients being served across the entire COC and entered into HMIS. However, we do see a spike in 2019 that goes back to almost 2018 levels in 2020 among Black or African American clients. In addition, we do see a large decrease of clients who identify as 2 or more races between 2019 and 2020. So we want to investigate these programs more because we want to figure out what caused the changes in demographics. This visualization ties back to the point from our executive summary, where the bulk of our admissions are in emergency shelters, with the next most popular program being homelessness prevention. If we take the previous visualization and break it out year over year, we can see a few points. First, homelessness prevention greatly decreased in 2020. In fact, total admissions were cut about in half between 2019 and 2020. Second, coordinated entry grew from its infancy in 2019 to be one of the largest admitted program types in 2020. Third, street outreach programs basically disappeared from the COC, whereas day shelter programs experienced a significant decrease in admissions between 2019 and 2020. And fourth, admissions in emergency shelters rose immensely during the pandemic. This could be due to an increase in client need, or the possibility that a new emergency shelter program started entering in HMIS. In this visualization, we see a major decrease in homelessness prevention admissions, likely due to the impact of the eviction moratorium and other pandemic assistance programs. In this visualization, we're looking at day shelter HMIS admissions between 2018 and 2019. There were no admissions in 2020. The most striking point from this visualization is how the number of Black or African American clients stayed relatively flat or constant between 2018 and 2019, whereas the number of white clients almost increased by tenfold. So there was some indication that this program type was either not collecting enough data, or they may have been located in an area that underserves Black or African American clients. Now we're looking at emergency shelter programs, and we can see admissions between 2018 and 2020. Again, the most striking item on this visualization is how the admissions for Black or African American clients stayed relatively flat year over year, whereas the admissions for white clients in 2020 grew immensely, if not almost doubled. So we need to investigate how this happened and identify if there are solutions that the community can make. Coordinated entry is a new program type in the COC, and it is hard to identify patterns when the data is so new and we don't have an established baseline yet. One note that I do want to call out is how we have a larger proportion of Black or African American clients being represented in 2020 than they were in 2019, indicating some positive progress for a program type that identifies the most vulnerable clients. Now we're transitioning to our annual rapid rehousing program admissions in HMIS. And what we can see is in the year 2020, demand was cut nearly by half for all clients. We do see that year over year, white clients were served more than Black or African American clients, and the greatest proportion or share of Black or African American clients was seen in 2019. The decrease in 2020 could be the impacts of the pandemic, such as the eviction moratorium and an already full housing stock. For this final visualization by program type, we're looking at permanent supportive housing admissions in HMIS. And what we can see is permanent supportive housing admissions did drop substantially in 2020, but the point of interest here is the difference in the total number of Black or African American clients admitted in permanent supportive housing. 2019 is the outlier, and we should investigate the differences further to identify how we can continue to serve Black or African American clients in permanent supported housing programs. In the next three visualizations, we will see the interactions between race and gender, race and veteran status, and race and disabling condition. In this visualization, we look at the interaction between race and gender. And what we can see is that the majority of our clients do happen to be male, but of all of our Black or African American clients, 61% of them are male, versus of all of our white clients, we see that only 54% are male. This information can be very helpful to a community planning their program offerings, especially when they have gender-specific housing. In this visualization, we are looking at the interaction between race and veteran status. And what we can see here is that of all of our admitted clients between 2018 and 2020, only 3% of admitted clients are identified as veterans. We do want to investigate if these numbers are accurate. The reason being is some clients may hesitate to state that they are a veteran if they were dishonorably discharged, they are currently not receiving VA benefits, or if they served in the National Guard rather than United States Army or Marine Corps. In addition, it's important to look at veteran status because there's additional program offerings for these clients, and we want to make sure that we have all possibilities to serve those in need. In this final visualization, we're looking at the interaction between race and disabling condition. Disabling condition is a point of interest because it creates different program eligibility for clients. For example, a client that has a documented disabling condition can access high barrier programs such as permit supportive housing. Whereas if they did not have the disabling condition, they may be referred to a rapid rehousing program instead. The reason we want to investigate this further is because we want to ensure that clients have all the possible program offerings to meet their needs. So therefore, we need to investigate if there are possibilities that clients are not being documented as disabled when they have a substance abuse disorder, for example, or they don't have access to a mental health counselor or access to local transportation to reach healthcare to get the documentation they need. All of this data was collected from HMIS, the HUD Exchange, and the United States Census. Please let me know if you have any questions, and thank you so much for watching.